Hey there, here's a quick note before we begin. You can support the podcast by downloading, sharing, or checking with my favorite hiking gear at justhyke.com. Let's hit the trail. Hey Bridgette, thank you so much for coming on to the Just Hyke podcast today. I appreciate you being here with us. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do. But before you get started, I know that you work with marine mammals,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
And you are part of the Texas Marine Mammal Stranding Network. So tell me a
exactly
bit.
right. Well,
Yeah,
thanks for having me, first of all. It's
you're
awesome
welcome.
to join your podcast. I'm part of the Texas Marine Mammal Stranding Network. It's a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to the conservation of marine mammals for the entire Texas coast. So we're the only stranding agreement holder for all of Texas, which means we're capable of responding to animals that strand or are entangled for the whole coastline. It is a large coastline. It's
It
like
is
over
big.
414 miles, but that does not include all the bays and systems that go up inland too. Like I said, we're a nonprofit and we're a staff of three currently.
Wow.
And then the rest of our team are amazing, dedicated volunteers that we could not function without.
So tell me, what does it take to rescue a stranded marine mammal? And is it mostly dolphins or is it
It's all sorts of animals, but primarily here in Texas, it's going to be bottlenose dolphins. That's
okay?
because that's the species that's closer to our shores and hanging out in the bays and other systems around us. A lot of the other species that we have here in the Gulf are further offshore, and there's about 29 different marine mammal species in the Gulf. Of that, 22 individual species have stranded on our Texas beaches. So we've responded to quite a few species diversity over our history since 1980, but the lion's share of that is going to be bottlenose dolphins.
Gotcha.
Um,
Now, can you
but
share
for
with me
yes,
some of the other animals that you've rescued? Like you said, different species. Turtles would
another
probably be one.
not turtles.
No?
Turtles are reptiles, not marine mammals.
Okay.
So, marine mammals are federally protected under the US government. You have to have special authorization permits under the Marine Mammal Protection Act to be able to do the work that we do. Interacting with marine mammals such as dolphins and whales is illegal unless you have this federal authorization that our organization holds. So there is a lot of paperwork that I would say that goes into being able to do the work that we do and having trained staff and the resources and communication up to NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service. For us here in Texas, we basically just see dolphins and whales because we don't have other marine mammals such as seals or sea lions or walruses or sea otters that live off of our shores. But you mentioned sea turtles. There is another organization that does respond to sea turtles here in Texas, and some of them are regional, but there's a couple of different groups that can help them out.
Gotcha. So if someone sees dolphin in trouble,
Yes,
should they call you guys? Like, how would they report an incident?
exactly right.
A whale or a dolphin or whatever?
Yeah, we operate a 24-hour hotline. It rings to a cell phone that either our executive director or our stranding biologist holds on to. You can call it any time of the day or night. We're ready to respond at any moment's notice, but it's 1-800-9-MAMMAL. So 1-800-962-6625 if you're not used to using letters on a keypad anymore. You can also report to our website, dolphinrescue.org, or through our social media pages, but we highly encourage to use that hotline number 1-800-9-MAMMAL to report. And it really takes a village, right? We're not everywhere on the coast. We can't be, and not all hours of the day. So this outreach to be able to get that number out to the most amount of people is crucial to the success of a lot of these rescues. Slowed if we speed up that reporting process. So what
For
you do
sure.
is you call. We need to know your GPS location. We need to know what it is. You don't have to be an expert to be able to identify species or tell us exactly how large it is. Phone cameras can do that for you. So take some pictures or videos, and then you can text that in when we reply back with the other number versus the redirecting hotline number. And then we find out if it's a live animal, if you're able to stay with it and provide first aid until we get there. Because as you can imagine, with a large coastline, it may take us a little bit to get to location. But luckily, we're able to talk a lot of people through those tasks on the phone, as long as it is safe to do so. These can be very dangerous animals, and intervening might be too stressful for them and not worth it in the long run for them. They can suffer from what's called capture myopathy, where they have a huge stress-induced event, then could go into organ failure and shut down. So we
Be
are
almost
making
like
sure.
shock, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that people aren't trying to help if it's not in the best interest for that animal until trained professionals can get there. Because we don't want them to get hurt. We don't want the animal to get hurt. So definitely report right away. A big pitfall that well-intended people do is they attempt to push them back in the water, but
Mm.
they're stranding for a reason, right? So, being mammals like us, they breathe air using lungs. So, if you take an animal who's sick or injured and too weak to swim on their own and push them back out in the water, they're at risk of drowning.
Oh,
Or
wow. I never knew that.
they'll end up just stranding somewhere else along the coast as the current takes them because they're too weak to maneuver their bodies on their own. And if that happens, they might not get reported. There's a lot of areas that are pretty untouched on our coastlines. So, and then the stress level gets higher then too, right? So we want to make sure that people don't push them back. Unfortunately, we get calls to our phone like, "Hey, I wanted to report a stranding, but we did it. We
Oh,
got it
no.
back in the water." Oh no, please.
So I never realized that. I'm so glad you brought that up. So what can people do? Like maybe provide them some shade? Is that a good idea?
Yeah. You want to keep them protected from the sun. They have very sensitive skin, even more so than us. So they're at risk of getting sunburn way worse than we are. Also, think they have that nice thick blubber layer to keep them nice and warm while they're surrounded by water all the time. Any of you have spent too much time in a pool or in water and you start to shiver because we lose a lot of heat to water surrounding us. So that blubber layer is going to not help them if they are on land and they can overheat. So by doing exactly what you said, taking water and pouring it over them, that's going to help keep them cool. So it's going to help with that evaporative cooling process while they're up on land. Now, when you're shading them to protect them from the sun, you can do a couple different ways. You can either use like a canopy tent or something like that's not going to be touching them, or you can use soaking wet towels or t-shirts, but make sure that they are soaking wet because they do have very sensitive skin. And when you cover them with those towels or t-shirts, we want to make sure that we don't cover their airway, which is their blowhole up on top of their head. They're breathing
Right?
up there, not through their
Yeah.
mouth. And then we want to make sure that we also don't cover their dorsal fin, which is the fin on the top of their backs, or their tail flukes, or ideally their pectoral flippers either. Those areas don't have any blubber, and they send their blood to those areas of their body to cool it and then recirculate that cooled blood to the rest of their body. So it's like taking away their personal air conditioning system if you cover those while they're trying to keep them cool. If you
Okay.
didn't have those options to
Yeah.
shade them, you could also use sunscreen as long as it's a
Really?
mineral-based sunscreen
Huh.
like a zinc oxide.
Very interesting. I've learned so much already.
The other thing that you would do to keep them comfortable, if it was safe to do so, of course, is you can dig little pits in the sand underneath their pectoral flippers, which are the ones on their side, because they have a collapsible rib cage. This way, when they're deep diving out in the ocean, they're not at risk of the bends. It removes that excess oxygen in their blood system and in their lungs, so it doesn't form nitrogen bubbles. But on land, that flexibility is going to put additional pressure on their lungs. It can make it more challenging for them to breathe. So digging those little pits can help stabilize them a little bit more and
Okay.
prevent them from rolling and take some of that pressure off. But again, that's if it's going to be safe to do so. And that's why you have to be on the phone and getting deputized by the local stranding organization before you do any of these tasks that we're talking about today.
Right.
So
Right. Don't push them back.
make sure that they have a clear airway, nothing's getting into that blowhole, and that we're not doing any more harm than good.
Now, so how did you get involved in all of this? Like, tell me a little bit about your background and I know you've had we chatted last week and you
Yeah.
shared that you've had quite the journey working with different animals along the way. So I want to hear all about that because I just think it's very fun and exciting. So,
Yeah, I've had a really cool experiences in all my field. I started out actually pretty young. I started out at a local aquarium because even before that, I just loved marine life and I loved being out in nature. And so going to camps as a kid and marine biology camps and all of the above. And then once I was old enough to get a job at the aquarium, that's where I started working. And then I did anything that they would let me do while I worked there, fell in love with marine mammals, and I was able to start volunteering with the marine mammal department at that aquarium. Eventually, I was hired on there, which was so amazing of them. But they were like, hey, make sure you still go and get your degree. So I went to college in Florida and majored in marine biology. While I was there, I worked at the Brevard Zoo as well as a alligator and crocodile farm and attraction, just to kind of diversify all the animals and get more experience and apply what I learned with marine mammals and penguins and primates to a lot of different other animals as well. All that time, whenever I was home for holidays or breaks, I was working at the Long Island Aquarium. I love it there. After I graduated, I wound up spending 10 years at Long Island Aquarium, and then I relocated down to Galveston, Texas for a rainforest biologist position at Moody Gardens.
Oh, fun.
And then I worked with their giant river otters, primates, ocelot, everything in that rainforest exhibit. Got to go over and help out with the marine mammals over there as well. But marine mammals were what I got my degree in and was my original passion. And while I was at Moody Gardens, I realized that there is a marine mammal stranding network literally just down the road from where I was working. And I was like, well, I need to go see if I can help out over there. And because it's largely volunteer based, I was like, sign me up, please. I love helping with conservation. That's always the big picture with anybody in the zoologic field. We're doing a lot of conservation in accredited zoos and aquariums. And so I started volunteering at Texas Marine Mammal Stranding Network. In the middle of all of that, too, I always want to contribute more to conservation. And I was in love with giant river otters as well. So I wanted to contribute to their conservation, looked for a group that I could support. And at the moment, there wasn't one. So me and a couple of different people I met at Otter Keeper workshops formed a giant river otter conservation organization. And we
Wow.
worked in South America in indigenous communities, doing giant river population surveys, doing wildlife clubs for the kids, training the community members to do all of that work, as well as veterinary clinics for domestic pets. Because we used a One Health approach to conservation to if it's healthy for the people, it's healthy for the otters. If the otters are healthy and the ecosystem's healthy, so is the community. And because they don't have a lot of the resources to test water and what's going on in their environment, they can use a indicator species like a giant river otter whose presence is indicative of a healthy environment, or if they leave, they're territorial. If they leave, they're highly sensitive to pollution. That means they should contact Indigenous Affairs and find out if they can come and test the water and see if it's going to be harmful to the community as well.
Oh,
So,
wow. That's such a great project.
yeah, it was a great, it was so much fun. I wanted to do more field work at that point in my life, and a position opened up at the Texas Marine Mammal Stranding Network. I had already been a volunteer for several years, and I was like, please, can I come join your team? I love all the stuff that you guys are doing. In addition to doing that rescue and rehabilitation of marine mammals for release, they also do a lot of amazing research and understanding the health of the ecosystems, the health of the populations of dolphins we have around us, and what we can learn from offshore species when they strand. A lot of what we know in the scientific community about those shy, offshore, deep diving species have come from them stranding to beaches and stranding networks doing necropsies and things like that. And then another fun component, which we're already doing today, is the education component of conservation, because all this work is amazing, but if we don't get everybody on board to help out and see what's going on, what's the point? The point is protecting species. We need everybody to help. So it's nice to be able to share my passion about it with a lot of the community and all over the place to talk about, hey, here's what we can do to help our marine mammals, and here's how they're helping us.
Thank you again for being here on the show today. Now, tell me, what does a typical day look like for an education coordinator?
So that's kind of the best thing about this position is there's no typical day. Every day is different. There's always so much to do. Like I said earlier, one of issues that we have is people pushing marine mammals back. So finding ways that we can connect in the community and new communities to reach out to just to get some public awareness out about things that we think that we're doing is helpful could be potentially harmful. So sometimes it's that passive educational opportunities like creating signage to go out in areas where we see high like hotspots of entanglements or hotspots of strandings, or I mean, there's not necessarily a hotspot, they can happen anywhere. But for entanglements and things like that, there's definitely hotspots around fishing piers, areas like shipping channels that dolphins are utilizing, as well as a lot of human traffic. So sometimes it's that passive signage. Sometimes it's having a Girl Scout group come to our rehabilitation center and learning all of the steps that we talked about earlier about beach care and how to report, as well as the research that takes place behind the scenes and what we can learn from caring for wild animals with the intent of re-release. So we can do educational programs here that are formal. Sometimes we're hitting the road and doing Whales on Wheels and taking our programs out to classrooms or to college campuses. Sometimes it's creating those programs. So I'll spend a lot of time developing curriculum as well as putting it together in formats that I like to call edutainment. So it's like educating but entertaining to the point where it's going to stick in your head and last. We're also doing social media posts to try to get that outreach out to people. A lot of it is data recording and recording all of that stuff as a nonprofit with very, very limited grant funding and things like that for all the work we do. We want to make sure we can report our outreach and see if we're being efficient with our time. So there's a lot of paperwork on the back end, recording volunteer hours, doing trainings of new volunteers. And then on top of all of that, it's also taking care of the building and the equipment that we have here, because we never know when an animal's going to strand and it has to be ready at all times. So there's a lot of facility maintenance. There's a lot of just cleaning vehicles and making sure everything's stocked. And then when a call comes in as a small staff, we all go. So then I also help respond on rescues. I help with rehabilitations when they're here at our facility. Sometimes when they need additional help doing photo identification work for research on dolphins, I'll go out and assist on the boat as well. So it's many hats. We do all the things. There's no
Sounds
typical
like
day. It's just what's the priority that day and constantly prioritizing every day throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your year.
now, so where's the farthest that you guys have had to go? Like you're based in Galveston, is that right?
Yeah, we're based in Galveston, but as the only authorized stranding agreement holder in Texas, we respond to the entire Texas coast.
Wow, it's a long
Everything
ways.
down to the border at Mexico and then even into Louisiana, because stranding networks are smaller field and tight-knit groups will help each other out. So even after big storms, our team will go into Louisiana and help them out, or they could potentially come and help us out. It's a good community for stranding network people to have those trained people that can help, especially after storms. Like I said, you'll see a lot of out of habitat cases. And
Mm.
that's when storm surge comes in and then the dolphins come inland with that storm surge. And as the water recedes, they can get trapped inland in all sorts of places, ditches on the side of the road, cow pastures.
Wow.
We've probably rescued a dolphin out of there.
Hey ladies, quick pause before we keep going. If you've been listening for a while, you already know I'm a big believer in hiking with confidence, and that starts with having the right tools. One of my favorites, and the one I actually designed myself, is the Just Hyke Trailmate. The Trailmate is a lightweight, multi-purpose trail tool that fits right in your hand or clips to your pack. It helps you stay prepared on the trail, whether you're digging a cat hole, clearing a little debris, or just needing something sturdy in your hand for that extra sense of confidence when you're hiking alone. It was designed by a woman for a woman with safety and leave no trace in mind. And honestly, it's become one of the best parts of my hiking kit. I don't hike the trails without it. If you want to check it out or get one for a friend, head to justhyke.com and look for the Trailmate. And as always, thank you for supporting this podcast and helping me spread the word of safe, confident, empowered hiking. All right, back to the show. So we had that big hailstorm that came through.
Mhm.
So I know that some of the birds had issues with that hailstorm off the coast. I think it was around Corpus Christi kind of
Yeah.
area. Now, would the dolphins have an issue or would they just go down? Like,
They typically would just go down, and as the hail hits the water's going to slow its speed
sure.
significantly. So there's always potential that you could see injury due to that. To my knowledge, I don't think we've seen anything from that hailstorm. However, the pelicans did take a beating,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
saw that. That was just so sad. So tell me, do you have a favorite rescue or heartwarming moment from the field? And it could be dolphin related or any of your experience. Like what sticks out to you the most? What do you want to
I
share?
think, gosh, I think I have two that I can't pick between. One was in January of 2024. There was a mom and a calf out of habitat. We had a heavy rain event. It wasn't even a hurricane or a tropical storm, it was just a lot of rain. And the calf swam through likely a water culvert. And mom's gonna follow baby. They're tight knit. They're gonna stick together. And then the water level receded and they got stuck inland. Monitored for about 2 days to make sure that they couldn't get out on their own. And then it was determined that yes, rescue intervention is definitely needed. It was no longer really salt water anymore. It was fresh water, which can cause lesions if they're in it for too long. And it was driving out to this rescue site. You're like, there's no way. Like, this is just dirt and grass. There's cows right over here. How are we going anywhere close to dolphins? And then we found them. They were like right there by a little water culvert. And that can be really challenging because now you're working with two animals in a shallow, narrow space. But we were able to get the mom and the calf under control, get them into the rescue van, and then release them same day. Luckily, they were not injured. There was no issues going on. They did great with being handled. We kept them side by side throughout the steps, so it took everybody working together to work with two animals at the same time and keep them close and everybody communicate without stressing out animals. And then in addition to all of that, they get a vet checkup before they get re-released. And one of those steps is taking good quality photos of their dorsal fins that we can use to identify them. Their dorsal fins are unique, just like our fingerprints. So
Really?
that gets added into a catalog that we have, and it's a nationwide catalog called FinBase. And then we can use that to identify individuals when we're doing population counts. No, you're not double counting, track individuals over time. And about 2 months later, after that rescue, we're out on photo ID survey, and who do we find but that mom and calf? And they were still
Really?
together and they were doing great. They were eating and socializing with other dolphins, and to see that they were still doing good and that our rescue interventions did not inhibit any of their social dynamics between mom and calf, that they were still together and they were doing all the things you want to see a wild dolphin doing was amazing.
Wow, that's really
That's
cool.
one.
Especially that full circle, right? To be able to
Yeah,
see.
it was like,
I
we know
bet.
who
I
that
bet.
is. Like, we
Now,
know
do you
you.
also, so in addition to identifying them by via their dorsal fin, do you
Yeah.
also tag the animals or no?
We potentially can. That's up to NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service, who gives us our authorizations. If they want a tag or a satellite tag on a release, then we'll put one on. But it's not always necessary, especially because we can identify them through that dorsal fin. So
Okay.
sometimes, yes, sometimes we do tag them, but not always.
So do you, so Okay, I'm envisioning, these all these photographs of dorsal fins and then
Yes.
like flipping through a mugshot book
Yeah.
trying to identify which dolphin it is.
Facebook,
Or
it's like Fin Book. Like you just go
fin book.
through and see all their profile pictures. It's just their dorsal fins, and that's how you can tell them apart. But there we can use like a software to trace the fin, and
And
when
then
we're
it
taking
matches.
those photos, you
Yeah.
have to it's a highly skilled photographer, and we have specialized permits to be able to approach the dolphins close enough to take those photos. Because typically, if you're out on a vessel, like any sort of boat, you want to stay about 150 feet away from dolphins.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
long ways.
it's a long ways. You want
Yeah.
to give them their space, give them their distance. That's the recommended viewing guidelines. And that's not just while you're on a boat, that's also while viewing from land. So 150 feet
They come to
closer.
you, you're supposed to back up.
If they come to you, then you should put your engine in neutral and allow them to pass. If it looks like they're trying to do something very specific where you're at and you need to leave, you can slowly leave, go away from them, and just be careful that you're not doing any quick, rapid, sudden directional changes with your vessel that they wouldn't be able to anticipate and prevent any harm. So, engine in neutral, keep quiet, definitely do not feed them, and then just try to get off on your own. So, anytime tell people who want to go see dolphins, I'm like, bring your binoculars. You can see them really, really well. You can still hear them. 150 feet sounds really far, but it's not that far
Right.
for a large animal like that in the water.
Yeah. Very cool. Now you mentioned so mother and calf, right?
Yes.
How often do dolphins have babies?
Each species is going to be different, but we'll focus on bottlenose dolphins because that's what we primarily see close to shore and
Please
we're most
do.
familiar with.
Yeah.
They can have a calf every 2 or 3 years or so. They put a lot of investment into raising their young. So the calves stay with them for at least the first 2 years, and they're actually not successful on their own if they lose their mom before they're about a year and a half to 2 years old, because their moms are teaching them how to catch fish, how to navigate, how to communicate and socialize with other dolphins. And what you see is if a calf is orphaned, they'll end up stranding. They'll sometimes strand over and over and over again. So calves that strand that young are typically not candidates for re-release because they don't have that knowledge to be able to be successful on their own in their environment.
Wow. So what do you do with a calf who
Yeah,
strands
the
that young?
orphaned calves will come into rehab here. Thankfully, due to a lot of research done at SeaWorld years ago, they've developed a specialized dolphin formula so we can get them great nutrition, get them reared up. And then ideally, if they're not a candidate for release, that is all determined by NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service. It's not us
Sure.
making that call. And then they put out like a dossier on that animal and its specific medical requirements, its social requirements to all the accredited zoologic facilities in the country, and
Okay.
we'll find it a permanent care facility to go live at. We've seen actually not that long ago, we did a rescue on a calf. Its mom, unfortunately, they were out of habitat, and its mom died on the shore of the area. And so we had to go and help catch the calf, which was too young to be re-released after it went through rehab and that determination was made. But that calf went to SeaWorld San Antonio, and a previous rescue of ours who was non-releasable, who lived there, actually adopted it, like kind of took it under its wing and showed
Aw.
it the ropes. So that was very heartwarming to see. But their next question would be like, well, then wouldn't other wild dolphins potentially adopt it? And unfortunately, the answer is no. There's limited resources. You have to be a little bit more selfish when you're out
Yes.
in a harsher environment. And so we don't see that taking place in a wild setting.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Can tell you a good amount of things about like how intelligent they are and understanding what resources they have available and what they can expend like excess resources on.
Have you ever had a moment in the field that really scared you or pushed your limits?
Thankfully, no. I think I approach any field work with a mindset that like let me plan for every possibility that could potentially happen and have a mental plan in place. I think some people call that high anxiety, but it's served very well when you're thinking about going into the field, especially working in remote areas where there is no paved roads, there's no extraction if something happens. In my past career, I've worked with dangerous and deadly animals, and I just have that mindset of prepare for anything. Here's all the different ways that it could go wrong, and here's how we're going to address them.
That's
So
so
good
very
planning gives you that little
absolutely.
bit of confidence, but also
Yes.
understanding that we got to put in the work to feel that way too.
So it makes me think of, confidence and perseverance,
Yeah.
planning ahead. And then there's this one saying, I think it goes, there's no bad weather, there's just bad gear choices,
Yes,
right?
exactly
So it's
right.
just, yeah, just planning and preparing and then being confident in your abilities to just kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that problem solving, and I'm a big nerd for that. Give me a problem. I love a puzzle.
I bet you, did you watch that movie with, it was called, what was it? The Martian with
Yes, I
Mars?
know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yep.
Everything is figure outable, right?
Pretend you're on Mars. When you're going to go on a hike or you're going to be out in remote areas, pretend you're on Mars. Have
There you
everything
go.
you need planned.
So, what personal lessons have the ocean and marine mammals taught you?
So I think it's like such a trope, but the interconnectedness, like everything connects to each other, and one choice that you make is going to affect so many other different things. You may feel small, but your choices and your decisions have big consequences globally. So everything from what fertilizer you use in your backyard, and then rain comes, runoff, that all goes into the rivers, into the oceans eventually. And what can happen with that is you can see like harmful algal blooms from having the wrong sorts of nutrients in the water. And that's just one choice, one season to let me try to have my grass a little greener or grow
Right.
something different. And then harmful algal blooms can pop up. What happened in 2011, 2012 here in Texas, where we saw a brevetoxin and it caused the death of around 120 or so dolphins.
Wow. Is that what
Yeah, it
that is?
is. And that can be caused from runoff of fertilizers and other harmful chemicals into an environment that can't support that level of extra nutrients in it. Like it's everything's so delicate and so balanced. Other things like doing research with necropsy or dead animals and finding out that of the sample size that we looked at of dolphin stomachs, 100% of them had plastics in them.
Yikes.
So, like little choices, single use plastics, like try to refuse before you reduce, reuse, recycle is step number one. Everything plays into one another, and just be mindful of the choices you make. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to say no to every straw that you use, but try to cut down. Sometimes you need certain things and sometimes you don't, and just be really mindful about your choices overall, that it does make an impact.
Right. The single-use water bottles, like that,
Yeah,
I think that's probably one of the, and of course, the straws, like you mentioned. There's just so many different ways that we can do stuff to be more mindful of our environment and what we're doing to it.
like water usage.
Right.
It's not, you take it for granted when it's just on tap.
Right.
But working in remote areas and water is such a valuable, critical resource. It puts into your head more about turning off the faucet when you're not using. Don't let anything run. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many little things that we just don't think about anymore. Science is so cool. But
Tell me, how does spending so much time outdoors and near the water help support your own mental well-being? Like, do you find it soothing and relaxing and, all of that stuff?
I do. It's such a nice, calming thing to be out and just listen to waves and not have all the other noises going on. And it just balances all of your other senses to, instead of just being locked in on a screen, just to have different smells, different tactile environments and sounds. It's so calming. And I think that's very much needed in a lot of people's lives, is to get some of the stress out and bring some of the calm in. So
Yes.
being out near the water or on the beach or on the trail is good for your soul, good for your mental health.
Yes, and I've been hearing So I listened to a few other podcasts out there, and I've been hearing other celebrities talk about, going into the forest or going off to the
Hmm.
beach, and just that's where they go to recharge, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us can take note of that. And it's like, well, yes, we need to protect these spaces, whether it be the beach and the ocean or the forests, so that we
Hmm.
have these places to be able to go and recharge and de-stress.
Yeah, you need that little retreat.
Absolutely. So many of our listeners are hikers and outdoor lovers. What parallels do you see between trail ethics and ocean ethics?
I would just say it's the same, isn't it? Just leave it better than you found it and be
I think so.
respectful. If you're hiking in the woods and you're cautious around bears, treat the same for dolphins and whales. Like
Advice.
respectful, they're dangerous animals too. You don't want to touch them. Anything that you're doing that could distract from their natural behavior, it could be harmful. So if you're out viewing dolphins and you're like, "Oh, come here," that might distract them from catching, it might distract them from breeding activity or trying to nurse their young. Even just loud sounds and noises would be annoying if it was up in your face too.
Right.
So I tell everybody to pretend that you're filming your David Attenborough documentary and you're like, over there is a fun little dolphin. We're going to be really quiet and just watch it in its natural surroundings. Just whisper, be quiet, sit back, pretend you're filming a nature documentary and let them do their thing where you can observe their natural behavior versus the disturbed one that you might elicit if you're not careful.
That's really good advice. Now, so you mentioned bears and dangerous
Yeah.
animals. So does marine mammals also include sharks?
It does not. Sharks are cartilaginous fish, so
Okay.
they're going to be breathing dissolved oxygen with gills underwater and don't need to come to the
Ah,
surface to breathe.
okay.
Um, Dolphins are mammals exactly like us. So they breathe air using lungs. They are warm-blooded. They have a backbone. They give birth to live young. They nurse their young with milk, and they do have hair. They actually have hair when they're first born along their rostrum, their little beak
Oh,
area.
really?
It's
Oh,
little
yeah.
vibrissae like whiskers. It helps them with nursing and finding their mom's teat in darker, murky water. And then it falls out eventually, but they do have hair at some point in their life. So they're mammals just like us.
What are some simple and powerful things people can do to help protect marine mammals in our coastal ecosystems? I think we already chatted about that,
Yeah.
like single-use plastics and the fertilizers that we put on our lawns and things like that.
Topics that are kind of specific. And I would say if you're a beachcomber or you like to go out on the water, one thing that you can do for marine mammals specifically is save your state's stranding hotline in your phone.
Oh,
Because
smart
when
idea.
you see an entanglement, you're not going to be like, oh, I remember that number.
Well,
Like, just save it in your contacts.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask you if if there's signs posted on the beach, but then if you come across something, it's like, well, where was that sign? Who do I
Right,
call?
exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so save
So
it in your phone
can
and
you
then
share
put it
that
under,
it's
it's 1-800-9-MAMMAL, which is 1-800-962-6625.
perfect?
And that's for
Okay.
Texas. If you're in another state, there's going to be a different number. You can also just go look at NOAA, National Marine Fisheries Service, and locate the hotline for the area you're in. That's assuming that you have cell service or
You're
the
at.
internet on where you're at.
Yeah,
So that's why I say save it into your contact list because you might not have service to be able to look up what the number is depending on your location. There's a lot of remote areas in our environment that we're in. Um,
absolutely. Now, so what would happen if someone just called 911? Do we not want to do that? Probably
I
not.
want to do that because you don't
No.
want to clog up 911 with other things too, but you can use the non-emergency line and they should know how to redirect you to get to us. That does slow down the process quite a bit.
Right. So you're better
So
off phoning the 1-800
1-800-9-MAMMAL.
9 mammal.
You, I tell people to remember it 9 for 911. It's an
Yeah.
emergency for a mammal. So it's
Nice.
1-800-9-MAMMAL. Or I like the Ghostbusters theme, and I say, "Who are you gonna call? Nine Mammal." And sometimes people remember it that way, not always, but
No,
it
I
sticks in
like
my head
that.
that way.
Everything helps us remember stuff. For listeners who might be curious about conservation work, what
Yeah,
advice would you give them for who wants to get involved but doesn't know where to start? Like, are you looking for
volunteer.
volunteers or?
Yeah, we're always looking for volunteers. Our website's dolphinrescue.org, and it's a volunteer application process. So you apply to become a volunteer, and then about every 6 months or so, we'll hold a volunteer training. We don't expect our volunteers to have a degree in marine biology or any sort of background, just people who want to support conservation and are dedicated to the mission. If you fill out that application, we have space available in that training coming up. We'll contact you once it's scheduled, and we'll teach you everything you need to know. So you'll go through a morning of classes essentially, and then in the afternoon, it's a swim test, a weight carry, and a mock stranding. So you can see what that process looks like with an inflatable pool dolphin
Ah,
before you would do it with a real animal. Our volunteers are so critical to our mission, and we always can use help. So that application process is always open.
now, do you need to live near the coast?
It does help, but it's not necessarily necessary. It depends on what the organization needs at that time. Sometimes we might need help with other different avenues. Sometimes we need more people closer by that can come help with those overnight shifts, middle of the day shifts of watching an animal in rehab when we're here 24/7 with them when they're in our care. Sometimes it might be more beneficial if you live further away from our organization and could potentially get to an area and start that first aid like we were talking about before the
Right.
rest of the team shows up. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and it's constantly fluctuating what the needs are.
So really anywhere along the coast
Yeah, even
of the
inland,
entire
some
Texas coast.
people and say, "Oh, well, I'm in Houston. Am I too far away?" We're like, no, if you can make a trip out and schedule it around what's going on, that's very beneficial. We do educational programs that are scheduled and you know when that's going to happen. There's the unscheduled side of rescue. And then when there's an animal in care, we're here around the clock. So you can plan what shift you want to come down for. So there's ways to schedule around being further away.
Nice. That's cool. Are there any other stories or moments that you want to share with us before we wrap it up for today?
We're coming up on stranding season.
Mean.
Here in Texas, by the late December into and throughout all of March, we see the highest number of strandings for marine mammals compared to the rest of the year. Most of it happens in those couple months. There's a couple reasons, and it all comes together at the same time. It's not one thing that is the reason. It's coming off of colder water temperatures over winter that might take sick animals and put them a little bit over the edge that might
Hmm.
cause them to strand. It's coming up with calving season, so a lot of extra stress on moms and calves in the environment. Changes in oceanographic features potentially, which might take animals that would typically sink if they've died and push them towards the shore, towards the beach
Mm.
instead. And then, yeah, there's a couple different things that all kind of come together right around that couple month period. And that's why every March is Dolphin Awareness Month. It's now celebrated worldwide,
Oh,
but it
wow.
all started from Texas's stranding season that we have
Really?
here. We see about 150 to 200 strandings a year, with the majority of those happening in that time frame. So
Really? Wow.
where you don't think to necessarily be on the beaches or beach combing that time of year, you're going to help us out if you are. to go spend some time, bundle up on the beach, and if you see something, make sure you report it. Even dead animals. We respond to dead animals as well. We get a lot of valuable information from researching why they stranded.
Wow. And that phone number one more time is 1
1-800
800 9
9
MAM.
call. Nice.
Anything else before we wrap it up, or are we good now?
Thank you so much for having me on today, and to all your listeners for being awesome out there on the trails and doing your part to help the environment. Just our website, which is dolphinrescue.org, if somebody
Okay.
was interested to learn more. All
You.
right.
All
Thanks.
right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining me today on the Just Hyke podcast. Remember, every step you take, no matter how small, is part of your journey from sidewalk to summit. I'm grateful you're here, growing, learning, and choosing to show up for yourself again and again. All right, before we go, if this episode inspired you, share it with a friend who's ready for more adventure. Together, we help more women feel confident on the trail.